Welcome back. This is Lee and Alison from the Law School Toolbox, and today we're talking about how on earth you should organize your time and stay focused in law school.
All right. Well, as we jump in, I think the first question we have is, what does a typical law student's weekly schedule even look like? Like, what do you do in law school?
You're busy, but what do you do? Well, I was surprised, and I think most 1L experiences are like this, how structured your week is when you're at 1L. I mean, you really have class like 5 days a week usually. The classes are usually spread out. You may have 2 classes a day. You may have kind of a break in the middle of the day, but it's pretty structured. It felt more like high school than college, actually, because it was so structured, and you're taking your classes with the same pool of people, which is also kind of interesting. So it really did feel like I was kind of at a job, like at a school job, more than I think like my undergrad experience.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like we had all of our classes crammed into 4 days a week. So that was even more intensely scheduled. I mean, I rarely had a break of more than except for lunch, like 30 minutes or so between classes. So sometimes you'll have these long breaks in the middle of the day. Sometimes your classes will be stacked back to back. Usually your schedule will flip on different days, and it can be a lot of different things. But, basically you're going to have to go to class. You're going to have to do a lot of reading, and then you're going to have stuff to do on your own. For example, making outlines or other study aids, and also preparing for exams. And I think that's a piece that can a little bit get lost in the shuffle, particularly in those first months of law school, where it is this very structured, read your cases, go to class, discuss the cases, go home, read more. And what can really get lost that I think is critically important to include in your schedule is this deeper work or time to reflect upon things, put them together, and then actually start applying your knowledge to some new scenarios like you'll have to do on an exam.
Yeah, and you have to protect that deep work time from things like legal writing assignments, which also take up a ton of time. So you blocked that out. You didn't even mention it because nobody likes to think about them.
No, I just mentally thought oh yeah, legal writing, that's a thing over there. But no, the reality is that will take hours and hours and hours of your time throughout the semester and can really start to take over when you have memos due and things like that.
Yeah. I think what becomes really challenging is to put some sort of structure on a lot of this unstructured time. You may have the class time, which is going to lend itself to be a little bit of structure. But, I think for most people, you're like, oh, cool, I don't have class till 10. But your day probably shouldn't start at 10. I mean, maybe if you're a true night owl, but I think for most people, your day shouldn't probably start at 10. I think it would be hard to do because you want to think about it like a job. What are going to be kind of the hours that you're going to dedicate to law school during the week and on the weekends while still making time for self-care, to take care of yourself and create a little bit of balance. It's a challenge.
It is. And I think you have to look at the week as a whole. So, what does your weekend versus your weekday look like? And people vary in terms of how, far in advance they might be able to do the reading, or they can do the reading and still remember anything about it. Yeah, for me, I'm notoriously not a morning person. So I did a lot of my reading after dinner, but for a lot of people that would not have been effective. Oftentimes people will, like to do a lot of the reading on the weekend. It just depends, you can kind of experiment with what works for you. But I think you want to kind of set up this cadence where you have a routine and you know basically how long things are going to take, and you've blocked out that time and you do it consistently, because it's just going to be easier than if your world is kind of a world of chaos.
Yeah. And I think you need to prepare yourself that you're talking about hours of reading for each class. I think that that's very different from most students' undergrad experiences. And so, it may say oh, well, I have 2 classes today. I could prep for 2 hours in the morning. Well, it's likely you have 2 hours of reading for one of those classes.
Easily,
yeah. And so you have to really think about preparing for class in a different way while still protecting those times, as you mentioned, for things like deep work. So, you want to look at the week as a whole. You want to either print out a calendar or look at, an online Google Calendar and start to place, when classes might be, when your other life kind of tasks are, and then look for those pockets of non-distracted study time where you can focus on exams, do things like those legal writing assignments, and get stuff done, because getting behind is a really dangerous thing in law school. It's pretty impossible to catch up.
No, as soon as you fall behind, you are in a very bad situation, basically, because the workload is so intense and so continuous that if you fall a day or two behind, now you're trying to catch up those days in addition to doing all the other stuff. Like, when are you going to have time to do that? There are no extra days in the semester, basically.
No. So you've got to stay on task. And honestly, my comment about that is if you're behind, you just have to cut it off and keep moving. You cannot go back. You only go forward.
Right. No, it's kind of like I was watching the Netflix Tour de France and they're talking about the Peloton and they're like, the Peloton just keeps going. It does not matter what happens. Like, it keeps going. And I feel like law school in a bit is like that. You can kind of see the cases or the Peloton. They just keep rolling.
It's true.
With or without you.
Yes.
So, at some point you might just have to cut it off and start again another day and get an outline to learn the stuff that you didn't learn when you were sick. I mean, that happens.
Yeah. I got the flu my first year of law school. I think I missed, 3 or 4 classes. I just had to get notes and work around it. I could not go back because I was too sick to study during that time. So you just have to make it work.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the class keeps moving and you got to keep moving with it.
Yeah.
Well, if you enjoyed this video, please take a second to give us a like and leave a comment, and be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss any future content. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us via the contact form on lawschooltoolbox.com, or you can take a look at our Start Law School Right course.